Welcome to Negotiation with Alice, your negotiation podcast. Everything that you do where you need to get on the same page with someone else is a negotiation. So whether you have to negotiate a contract with someone, or you simply need your boss to sign off on that program that you'd like to implement, or you want to figure out how to rebalance the chore structure in your home, or talk about what vacation you want to go on. All of these things are negotiations. So in my podcast, we go over both personal and professional conversations, which all are considered negotiation, and I will give you tips on how to come out ahead. Welcome to the show. Welcome, listeners, to another episode of Negotiation with Alice. Today, I've got Kirstin Carey here with me today, and she's going to introduce herself and tell us a little bit about who she works with.
Oh, thanks, Alice. So I guide businesses with high ticket offers to a 50% sales conversion rate or more with less time on calls so that they're not feeling pushy or burned out, or they want to feel like enrollments are easy and fluid and simple. Then they're going to love the process that I use.
Oh, wonderful. So I'm really excited to talk about all things negotiation, and that also includes sales, and then also includes psychology, because all three things are very tightly woven. And so, Kirstin, I'd love to open it up with you to talk a little bit about how you do that, how the psychology negotiations work together in your processes.
Yeah. So right out of college, I actually started my own companies, my own businesses, and I got right into marketing and sales because I was a communication student, and my favorite classes were the persuasion classes, right? What can you say or do to help someone do what it is that you want them to do? And I learned all the different levels of the tactics and the make them do kind of thing. But then I also started asking questions about how do I feel good about that, right? Like, how do you understand how to make someone feel good about their decision and you feel good about their decision too, and not just tricking them or forcing them or making them do it? And a lot of the sales and marketing things that are out there are how do you get into the psychology to make them say yes? And that never felt good to me. And what's interesting is I got into health care because I was diagnosed with a couple of autoimmune conditions. I was traveling all over the country and I was burned out. So I went back to school for nutrition, but then when I started finding that my clients heal better when their psychology and their emotional state was more balanced. So I have a bunch of letters after my name and neuropsychology and all the stuff where I even learned, hypnosis and NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, and I got into all of that. And it was because I wanted people to heal faster and better. And when you get into the theta state of the brain, so there's a brainwave called theta, that's where decisions are truly made, but they're made in an unconscious way. So most of us decided how we make decisions, believe it or not, from the time we were 7 or earlier. So if you can understand more about what drives their decisions and what's driving their want to say yes, or frankly, their want to say no, you can help them get to the best decision for them and frankly for you. So I built a multi-million-dollar healthcare company. I was doing high ticket sales. And when you have somebody who doesn't feel good, they're typically making decisions from a fear space. So you have to help them get into a place where they see where they want to go and help them get there. So it's in their best interest as well as yours. And I think, unfortunately, a lot of the psychology that's out there is teaching us just how to make them say yes, not necessarily how for us to both feel good about that decision. So after I built that company and I was 15 years into that company, I decided I really wanted to come back into health and into sales and marketing. So I have my company Evolve now, and we work with these business owners with high ticket offers. So you know that $3,000, $5,000, $15,000, $30,000 offer. How do you help someone to make a decision to spend that kind of money with you and really see the benefit? And you also taking in the right client, so you don't get chargebacks, you don't get people who aren't moving through the program, people who are getting the results. Because if somebody's not in a good space when they make a decision, chances are higher they won't get the result the way, even if your program is amazing, and that they're going to be less happy about it. They won't give you the referrals. They'll want their money back at some point. So I started really studying that because I had built my own businesses doing that and started working with clients. And I even step onto some of their sales teams because they'll have sales teams saying, this person's broke. They have no money. Everyone you give me is a bad lead. And I'm like, is that true? Or is that also the salesperson's underlying psychology playing into the story? And a lot of times that's also bumping up against the fear from the customer or the client or the potential client is also bumping up against the fear from the salesperson.
Yep.
So if the salesperson already has financial traumas, they don't have a good relationship with money, they don't understand what they're truly selling from like a true core heart space, which I know sounds woo-woo to some people, and they're just following the script and they're just plugging away and they're just in that space themselves and they're sending that vibration out to the other person, the sale won't go through the way it could or should have. So I don't know, hopefully I'm answering the question there, but that's where I get into. So the psychology behind the salesperson, as well as the person coming into the conversation, is really important.
You know, that's really interesting that you're talking about that, because it's the same in any sort of conversation between people. As a mediator, I see this all the time. Yeah. Where people who are in conflict, basically one person's trauma is triggering another person's trauma.
Yes.
And so that's basically what you're talking about. It may not necessarily be trauma, right? But someone's triggers are triggering the other person's triggers.
100%.
And so you have a sales conversation where someone might be afraid of spending money, and it's bumping up against the salesperson's fear of, you know, going deeper with this person in conversation about money, because they also have emotional like triggers around money.
Yeah, 100%. And then that vibration's just triggering both people at the same time. So now you're both in a vibration of fear around money. Yep. Now nobody can get over the side. And then the salesperson ends up cranking harder sometimes. And their curious questions don't come across as curious. They come across as pushy.
Yes.
And it could be the exact same question, but it's coming across as icky to the person that feels like they're being sold. So I always try to help salespeople understand your job is not to sell them. Your job is not to take a credit card. Your job is not to get the deposit. Your job is to help find clarity for both of you. Is this the right time, the right program, the right process for this person, and frankly, for the company? Exactly. If not, let's get to a clear no.
And I'm curious about your opinion, because I know I have mine regarding scripts. I feel like if people are trained using a script, they end up relying too heavily on it, which is to the detriment of listening. They don't listen because they're waiting to ask the next question. What are your thoughts?
Yeah. Oh, we are 100% on the same page. I have a whole program where I do a no scripts process. So no scripting sales. And it's not because we don't have things that we have in front of us to help us. It's if you're worried about the next word that's coming out of your mouth or the exact way to phrase something to get them to this point, you're missing the whole vibe of the whole conversation. Yep. I'm curious if they're saying what they're saying, where is it coming from? And that curiosity gets completely overrun, which I know you totally get. And you said, because you're following the script and the script is leading you, not your understanding of who this person is as a human.
Yeah, I feel like sales calls should actually be curiosity calls, right?
100%.
You're trying to find out, is this even a match?
Right.
And so it's all about problem solving, and it's trying to find, you know, they call it like, I think, discovery calls, whatever you want to call it. And I feel like it's not, just like you mentioned earlier, it's not about closing it and getting the sale, having the check in hand or the credit card number. It's about really deeply understanding this human being.
Yeah.
Where are they coming from? What are their fears? How are they operating? Right? Because you have some people who have no problem putting down $5,000 to $10,000 to invest in themselves, to say, you know what, I don't have the money, but this is so important, I'm going to go ahead and put it on a credit card. And you have other people who might have that money in the bank, but they're like, I'm not comfortable, right? So it's really not about money. It's about what is the driving force and emotion that everyone has about their money like situation. And like you mentioned, this comes from, like, your money mindset comes from when you're a child.
Yeah.
Right? How did you grow up? What were the beliefs that were passed down from your parents? And then how did that inform every single financial decision that you're making going forward, right?
Yep. And it's so funny because people will say, and I'm always like, it's never actually about the money. We use the money as the blocker, right?
Yep.
But everyone makes decisions emotionally and they justify it logically. And men especially will tell me, no, I'm a logical thinker. I'm like, I know you want to see that, and that's actually part of your emotional driver, right? Is that we believe we're emotional beings, but we're intellectual beings. We are, but all of our decisions are informed from an emotional standpoint of the way we need it to be. So, like my dad, he would have told you all day long, I'm a logical thinker, and this is how I do buying decisions. No, my dad was very big on you only spend money when it's safe. And if you really pull that apart, let's go to that emotion, right? But when you look at what you spend your money on, so I always give people this opportunity. If you want to see what your relationship is with money, go look at the 5 top things you take pictures of, the 5 top things you post on social media, and the 5 top things that are on your credit card as far as how much you spend. And you can tell so much about a person based on those 3 things. So if you looked at my credit card statements right now, where you see the money being spent, or where you look at my financial life, it's my mortgage, my dogs, and my health. So you look at like what I'm spending money on food. So I probably spend more money on groceries than the average person, but I don't eat out. Right. So you see what's important to me. It has to be organic. It has to be all of these things because I'm trained in all that and I want to live healthy. But my dogs are important to me, but I don't treat them like kids. They're still dogs, but they eat organic and they eat all the things, right? So you can tell a lot about me just seeing my credit card statements or my bank account. Not how much is in there, what the money is flowing out as. Right. And I'm spending a lot more money than somebody else. So they're like, well, that's not logical. I'm like, to me, it's incredibly logical because if I spend money on organics and I stay healthy, I'm spending less on insurance. I'm spending less on health after the fact. I'm spending less on all these other things. But emotionally, it's the right thing to do, my perspective. So if you can get to that point, you won't have objections. Like the whole objection handling thing, I've been through all of the bro marketing, shove it down their throat, beat them till they say yes, sales programs as well. And there's always a section on objection handling. I'm like, there really shouldn't be any objections by the time you get to the end of the call. Yep. Because you should have been able to clear those before you got there. And if there is 1 or 2, it's just that instinct of from the person you're talking to of, let me just make sure I did my due diligence. Let me just make sure before I'm ended here that I did the right thing or I asked the right questions. But if you're getting a whole litany and you're like going to blows with them on objection handling, something went wrong at the very beginning stages of the conversation.
Absolutely. There's so much to unpack here. I want to go back a minute to what you talked about, how you can look at your Instagram posts, your social media posts, looking at, and what I love about that, so I haven't heard of this. This is new to me, but what I love about that is that it helps people uncover their subconscious decisions because people are doing those things sort like, yeah, I'm intentionally putting a picture of my cat on my social media, but the pattern that we are exhibiting is very, very nuanced and it's sort of subconscious. Like we don't realize that, 50% of my stuff that I put out there is cats, right? It's just my love and my passion for my cat might be doing that.
Right.
Or like you mentioned, if I go to the store, I'm just thinking, I really want to get organic stuff. But then if you uncover my pattern of thinking, which is that I'm consistently doing these things, I think that's an excellent way for people to realize it's sort of a self-reflection that you can do for yourself and say, like I didn't realize I was exhibiting these patterns.
Right.
And then now you can kind of see what that underlying subconscious thing is doing, like how it's showing up in your life. Right?
Exactly. And everything is patterns, right? So you understand psychology, so patterns are pretty much everything that speaks to what our subconscious is doing. Because our subconscious's job is to find the pattern as quickly as possible so that it can spend fewer resources doing something. So only like 10% of what we do is truly in the conscious. The other 80 to 90% is all floating underneath in a pattern. So you aren't usually aware of a lot of your patterns because they're en route. Like I figured out how to get to work. I drive this way every day, but they put you up against a detour and you're like, whoa, now I need more actual resources to go to work that way because I have to think it through.
Exactly.
So understanding that underlying piece is incredibly important to being curious about who we are and not judging.
Right.
Like, I'm not going to stand there and like, how dare you? You're stupid for spending money on these things. No, it's an understanding of that's important to you. And if it's important to you, how does that tie to what it is that we're talking about and the program that I have or the piece that I'm trying to help you see, is this the right thing for you? Or how does it maybe work against, and maybe you're not the right client for this?
Right.
Right? It's curiosity without judgment.
And the other thing too is, even if you see the patterns and you say, oh, these are important to me, it also might be that you're working against yourself.
Yes.
In
And what you
that,
think you're doing.
yeah, exactly. Like you might think like, oh, I really want to lose weight, and then realize like you're buying a lot of candy.
Yeah.
Right.
You're buying a lot of candy, or you're participating in activities that keep you in a space where you feel like you're being unnourished or undernourished, or you're trying to fill a void. And that's all psychology too. So it just helps bring awareness. And when we're conscious and aware of something, that's when you can actually change it.
Yes. So I love that. And then the other thing that I wanted to jump back to is handling objections. And I'm totally in your camp that there should not be a handling of objections. But what I like to think of is that a sales conversation should just be a curious conversation about what the other person's needs are, where they feel like, things, if someone says like, well, I can't afford it, to really unpack that, to say, is this something that you want to invest in yourself or not? Right.
Yeah.
And if it is, I'm curious, like, why are we talking? Or if it's not, why are we talking?
100%. Yeah.
And then sometimes I also ask, if we were to take money off the table, like, how are you feeling about working together? And people will bring forth more things because, like you said, money is just the wall people put up so that they can block the conversation. So if you remove that and say, let's just talk about the course itself, how can you see this helping you? How can you see yourself in 6 months? How would you be different or improved in 6 months to a year if you did purchase this course? And really just having a deeper conversation with the other person so that you can understand, oh, this is sort of where they're struggling. Maybe this is the course for them. Maybe it's not. But like to have that open and non-judgmental, non-pushy conversation to discover more about that other person. Right, Kirstin?
Yeah. I've had people show up to calls. The first thing out of their mouth is, I don't have money for this. And I'm like, okay, cool. Let's just push that to the side and let's just have a conversation about why we're here. And is there maybe another solution? Maybe I can refer you to somebody else. Let's see what the right thing is. And then I've had people who like start with here's my credit card, let's go. I'm like, well, whoa, slow that down a second. Let's make sure this is the right thing for you, because I'm more interested in you getting the 6 things that you said you wanted and this being the bridge to get you there than taking your credit card right now. And then they're like, oh, okay. Because I also don't want somebody in my programs or any of the programs that my clients are selling and getting into that program and being the wrong person. Because I know everyone on this podcast listening to this right now has had that customer or that client when they see them calling on their phone or they see them on their calendar, they're like, ugh. Like there's that. I don't want that. I also don't want somebody getting into one of my programs or the programs for my clients and feeling like they're failing in it. So we need to be gatekeepers too for them and for us to make sure we're getting the right people in at the right time for everyone. So I take money off the table the second we get in there. And it's amazing how many people find the money, right? When they see the other side of it, or how many people who started out with all the money who we find it's not the right move for them right now.
Right.
So,
and then, yeah, I was going to say too that sometimes people who are maybe just starting out or struggling to find clients, they're the ones who end up having clients that they would like to fire.
I know. And we all make that mistake. So, I mean, that's part of the learning process, right?
Right.
But some of us, if you make one more sale that month, it's going to completely change your month, right? Especially if you're selling a high ticket offer, $3,000, $10,000, $30,000, one more sale completely changes the whole quarter sometimes. So when we're selling in that desperation, that vibration, I mean, there's the whole joke, you can smell desperation. It's not really that jokey. There's a vibration we put out there when we're just trying to close the sale because we're trying to impact the bank account. To no, this isn't the right thing, because that opens up more people, the right people to come when you're able to say no to the wrong ones. But the trust in that, especially for a newer business owner or a business owner that saw a shift in their business, which is a lot of people right now, there's a fear space going on that you bring that to the call, it's going to go sideways.
I want to talk a little bit too about the vibration. So I totally understand that speak. But for those clients of mine and listeners who maybe are kind of like, that sounds a little woo woo for
Low
me.
to
I
woo,
don't
yeah.
know. What I want to say, I want to reframe that and say that 93% of communication is nonverbal.
Yes.
And so whatever you have going on in your back of your mind, the thoughts that you have are being communicated loud and clear. In some ways, we can call it a vibration, but it's also non-verbal communication that comes across
Exactly.
in our facial expression, our tone, our attitude, our body language. And so 7% is such a small amount that's actually being communicated by the words that we use.
Right. So let's talk about it from the the science behind it. So everything has a vibration at all times. So like we have a vibration when we're happy, we have a vibration when we're sad. The tree outside of the window here has its own vibration. My dog is vibrating because she's asleep right now differently. And so everything has a vibration. It's actually measurable. So they will do measures. So if you've ever walked into a room where you felt something was off, you're sensing a vibration for either the room, the people that are in the room. If you've ever walked in a room and somebody's angry, you can feel that. And we are designed to feel that. So we're all sensory beings. So we're smelling, we're seeing, we're feeling all the time. Now, the older we get, or after 7 years old, we are moving out of the sensory piece and much more up into the intellectual piece. It's just how we're biologically designed. So actually, interestingly, animals especially, and children under 7 are actually utilizing the vibration more, that sensory experience more than they're using the words. Because they don't understand the words at that point, so you could go talk to your dog and say horrific things to them, but say it in a sweet tone. They're vibrating off of the tone, right? So if we understand that from a science perspective, when you walk into a room, and this isn't woo-woo anymore, this is like legit measurable stuff, and you're in an angry space, or you're in a triggered moment where you're feeling fear from something else, and you step into a call, or you just saw your bank account, or you just lost a client, and you've got your last client on the day, and you want to enroll that person or potential customer, you may be bringing a whole different vibe to that conversation that the other person picks up on and doesn't know why. So now they're feeling fear, and now they're like, maybe this isn't the right program for me, even though it would be the best. So there's like legit science behind that. And if we don't appreciate that, and if you talk to anyone in negotiation or sales or market, they're always like, I have to be in the right space for that.
Yep.
And that's important.
Definitely. I always talk about bringing the right energy to a conversation.
Yes.
And if you want something good, you have to come with good energy, right?
Right.
And one of the things that I like to talk about, it's not quite sales, but when you're going to, let's say you're calling up a customer service line and you're upset because something's happening, the go-to reaction people usually do is they want to yell at the customer service person, demand that they deserve X, Y, and Z because they didn't get the service that they should be getting. And I'm always like, if you show up with like nasty energy, no one is going to want to help you. It's the same thing in sales. You don't want someone showing up being aggro, aggressive, pushy, all of these things, because then your energy is like, oh, I want to move away from that, right?
Yep.
Whereas if you feel like the person's vibing with you, you've got great chemistry, you like them, then, naturally you're going to think, oh my gosh, I love Kirstin's energy. I want to work with her. I love how, she shows up. And so I think that's very, very important when you are talking with other people to show up with the energy that you want reciprocated back to you.
100%. And what pretty much everyone is always trying to get is to feel seen, heard, and understood.
Yep.
That's what we want as people. So if you can come, as I say, to the same side of the table with them, where you're not on the other side, you're not adversarial, you come to that side of the table because you're trying to see them, you're trying to hear them, you're trying to understand where they're coming from. It's amazing the shift that will happen and the trust they will hand you in just a 30-minute or 45-minute conversation.
Yep.
Right? And I can't tell you the number of clients who've come to me and said, I felt safe talking to you, which, God, that speaks volumes, right? And if you're talking to somebody about separating from their money to do something, especially something that's a dream, that they're afraid maybe they're not good enough to get there, or they haven't been able to do it before, or they've spent $30,000 or $50,000 trying to get there so far and they don't feel like they got there in the other programs they've done, the level of trust that they have to have for you as a salesperson becomes incredibly high.
Yep, definitely.
So if you are in a conversation, you're asking a question, you're following a script, and the underlying current of that is not, I'm trying to understand you and see you and hear you. They're going to know that. So when I have people, when we write scripts, but we're really not script, it's the, why are we asking this question? Mm-hmm. Right? And a lot of the times it's not telling them the answer. It's helping them find the answer on their own and hearing their own mouth say why they need the program, not here are all the benefits and all the stats and all the things. It's, why do you think you need the program now that you know what's not going to work for you? And people are afraid to ask that.
Yeah, I think the value in scripts is learning how to ask the questions.
Yep, the hard ones especially.
Because people might say like, well, I don't know what kind of questions I'm supposed to ask. So a script is there to show you, here's a template. Please don't use this verbatim. But here's a template of what kinds of questions to ask, how to be curious, how to understand someone better, right? It should be like that kind of help as opposed to let me use this verbatim in the order that it was given to me.
Yeah. And if you're only doing that, you're so in the left brain, you can't connect with them. You can't hear them. You can't. So I sometimes I jump on the sales teams of clients because they'll have, their team is of 7 people or whatever it is selling their programs is like, there's not enough good people. These are bad leads. No one has any money. And I'm like, all right, well, let's legit figure that out. I'll step in and just sell with you and I'll sell alongside you and I'll help you. And I typically sell a lot more than they do, not because I'm better at the tactics and the tricks and I know their product, frankly, any better than they do. It's because I'm just freaking curious about what are we doing here? And I'm not necessarily following the script. I'm following the process, the understanding of why would I ask this question here and now? And that's more of the understanding of human behavior. So when I teach my clients, it's more teaching the psychology and the human behavior. And some of those questions we skip and some of them we never skip. We just don't necessarily have to ask them in this order. Like it's not a recipe, right? It's an understanding of why we're doing the things we're doing and how do you roll with that.
And I'm curious if you teach this as well. So one of them, like you mentioned earlier, like people want to be seen and heard, right? And understood. And a really powerful, it's a tactic, but it does resonate with people, is to at least be able to listen, like do the active listening so well that you can just mirror back what it is that you understood. Because when that happens, and that is a step that is frequently skipped in conversations, people feel like, wow, Kirstin, like, she heard me. She heard what I had to say. And so even if it's a tactic, it does work. And I have had it used on me knowingly, right? Like my boyfriend's like, let me go ahead and I'm going to use your tactic. I'm going to say everything back. But when he does it, my brain relaxes. And my brain says, okay, he was listening. He was listening enough to be able to like say it all back to me. So I know that he heard what I had to say. And it actually works.
Oh, it works 100% for the very reason of people want to make sure they're being seen, understood, and heard. So if you can repeat back to them, and you don't do it verbatim.
Right.
You repeat back to them your version of what you understood. So I'll say to them, I just want to make sure I understand here. This is what you're looking for, and this is the thing that you're worried about happening. And they're like, yes. And it's not because it's a tactic. It's because you really do legit want to make sure you get it, because sometimes you don't. Exactly. And you think you heard it because you've done this call 70 times this last 3 weeks. And you think you know ahead of the customer where they think they're going. And sometimes you do, because we know our people. But sometimes you don't. And they said something in a way that you misunderstood. But even if you didn't, them hearing it back, even if you're wrong, they're like, oh, no, it's this. And you're like, oh, thank you for the clarity.
Exactly.
And it's like, oh, so now they're like, oh, my God, this person's legit here for me.
Yep. Absolutely.
So it's a beautiful way of reframing and understanding. And then like, oh, I didn't understand that. But that's also where they're like, now I feel safer to tell her more. Because if somebody gets to the end of the call and I think it's a good match and they've said all the right things, and for some reason they're like, okay, well, I'll call you in a few days. I'm like, okay. And you can absolutely do that. I'm not have to force them on a one call close thing. But if they really aren't handing over the credit card or whatever the payment structure is at that point, I'm like, hey, I'm just curious. What is stopping you from moving forward right now? Because I must have missed something.
Right.
And they're like, well, I always sleep on stuff. I always go pray on it. I always go do it this way. I'm like, oh, that's an underlying fear. That's fine. And they have a pattern. So I even speak to the pattern. And like, well, that's your pattern and that's cool. And I'm not going to push you to take the credit card today. In fact, I don't even want the credit card right now. What I want is to understand, is that the pattern that's been stopping you from getting the result that you've been looking for? Because that's the pattern you've used. Because you put up this block, and that might be a psychological stopper for you to get $30,000 a month or whatever it is they're looking to do. And then they're like, huh. I'm like, it's just a reflection. What do you think about that? And they're like, oh. And then a lot of times they're like, let me go get my credit card. And sometimes they're like, no, I'm still going to do it. I'm like, that's cool. So in this case, otherwise you feel good. You just know you need to sleep on it. Yep, cool. When do you want to get back on a call? And then they're like, and if they're still like, no, I'm not putting that on. I'm like, yeah, they are something that they're so hung up on that they won't reveal. That's typically not a sale that's going to go through.
I love how you bring up the pattern for them to say, oh, just for your awareness, this seems to be a pattern that, yeah, because it makes them reflect like, oh, is she correct? Am I actually always doing this? And why?
Yeah.
Right? Why? Is it because my intuition is always blocked when I'm on a call and I need to remove myself? Like, what is happening? But I love that you surface that for them and bring that to their awareness.
Well, a lot of those people, if that ever comes up in a call, it's typically because they felt like they made a wrong decision at some other point in their life and they're still berating themselves for it. So sometimes I'll be like, and I'll ask them, I sometimes see this with people. And is that true for you too? Is there something that you feel like you messed up or you made the wrong choice at some other point? And they're like, yeah. And then they start talking about that. And I'm like, okay, so now we've gotten another layer of this.
Yep.
So let's talk about that. And how do you see this program being different than whatever that was? Or this got you to this point. So there's no wrong or right choices. It's the one that got you to where you are now. And do you feel like you're in the right place now? Then we talk about, so it's just, you're curious about what is this pattern? What's beneath this? What are you willing to chat about? Especially if you're dealing with a program that's a high ticket program and you are working with psychology or you're working with some of these transformational types of things, business, health, or whatever it is that you're selling. A lot of times it is this that is actually the magic behind how they get their solution. So you might as well talk about it now.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. I think it's so important in any of these, if you have difficult conversations, sales conversations, negotiations, to really understand psychology.
Yeah.
Because as I mentioned in the beginning, it will give you an edge, right? Because you, Kirstin, have such a deep knowledge of psychology, you're able to show up in these sales conversations because you understand that there's some psychological things going on. And you can say, oh, this is a pattern, or oh, there must have been something else that happened in your past that's leading you to have this reaction, right? But if you are someone who's like, oh, I'm in sales and I know nothing about psychology, you're doing yourself a disservice. You don't have to have a degree. You can read books. There's so many books out there. There's so many online courses out there to be able to just educate you on human psychology.
Yeah.
Because the art of persuasion does, in fact, include psychology.
Always. It's human behavior. It's how we all function. So it's a learning for you as well as for them. And you're doing yourself and them a disservice if you're not understanding these pieces. And I think just relationships are better when you can understand this, because you come at it from, it's not about me. It never actually is. My reaction is about me, but their reaction is about them. I may have triggered it, but just because I tripped over the wire doesn't mean it was my fault, right? But understanding it and coming at, if I'm ever in a disagreement with my spouse, I hope, he may tell you a different story, but I hope I always sit there and I go, I'm seriously curious why this has happened. Why is he reacting this way? So I'll say to him, babe, I love you, but I need to understand where you're coming from with this, because I'm trying to understand. And then we both relax a little bit more. And I've done that in really difficult conversations with family members or friends when they're in a space where I'm like, this isn't going well. How can we understand each other better? Or maybe we need to walk away for a minute, breathe, and come back to the conversation. But that should be the space most of us are coming from, is I'm just curious, how is this going this direction?
And without judgment, with no judgment.
Yeah, which is hard to do. hard to do. And when we are coming in with judgment, that's typically a trauma that locked itself in again before we were 7. So we can learn a little bit more there too, is why am I judging in this space? Because if I get brutally honest with myself, I do slide into judgment sometimes, and I go, where's that coming from? What version of me? Where did that stem from? Oh, okay. All right, I get it. Okay, and that's an ego shot sometimes, and some of us don't like the ego shot. So there's a lot of learning, there's a lot of healing, there's a lot of up-leveling when you can do that.
Yes, and I just want to give one more tip about judgment, because we always talk about what to do, but we rarely talk about how to do it. And so I asked people, like, oh, by the way, I always say don't judge. Do you know how to do that? Because as a mediator, that's what I have to show up. I have to show up and never have judgment on either side, no matter what the circumstances are. And so my advice is to, when you're in conversation with someone, turn off those underlying thoughts. Mm-hmm. Don't have the judgmental thoughts while you're in conversation, because it comes through in, like we talked about, your energy, your vibration, like your nonverbal communication. It's coming across. They're going to feel it, right? So turn it off and think about something that you really like about the other person while you're in conversation with them. Yeah. And it shouldn't be like, oh, I like Kirstin's hair. It should be something authentic about that human being, right? And if you can at least focus on that one thing while you're in conversation, they will not feel like you're judging them.
Yeah, and understand they're human, right? So we all have our flaws. We're all flawed humans, but our version of what is right and wrong is coming from a version of also fear and what we think is safe. So if this person is acting this way, there is a version of them that is actually trying to feel safe. So, and I also like to try and say, look at them as if they were a 5-year-old.
Yep.
Would you judge that 5-year-old the same way you would judge that 55-year-old? You come at it differently. You're not excusing their behavior. You're trying to understand where it might be coming from.
Yep.
And that shifts the energy too, which is helpful.
Because you can have more compassion, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Again, not agreeing with the energy, not saying it's perfectly okay for you to be behaving this way. So you have to hold a boundary there, but at least trying to understand where it's coming from.
Yep. Yep. Well, Kirstin, this has been such a lovely conversation, and I'm sure you and I could go on for hours. So thank you so much for the time that you spent here today with me and my listeners. And if anyone wanted to work with you, Kirstin, how can they get in touch with you? And we'll also have your information in the show notes.
Question. Yeah, so evolveminded.com is the best place to find me. But I do have a free download, the 7 biggest sales mistakes that are costing you high ticket clients and how to fix them. So they can go to evolveminded.com/7 mistakes.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And thank you, listeners, for tuning in to another episode of Negotiation with Alice. Until next time.